Okay, now to one of the most frustrating parts of buying tickets for concerts or events. The long waits to get into that online queue, and then bots just buy up all the tickets and then hike up all the prices. The Michigan legislature is trying to crack down on that. A bipartisan bill just passed the House, and it was inspired by one concert in particular.
Vintage tea, brand new phone, high heels on, cobblestones. When you are young, they assume you know nothing.
Well, they are calling it the Taylor Swift bill, and it passed the House in a near unanimous vote. The sponsors of the bill right here in Nick's Nook, State Representative Mike Harris, a Republican out of Waterford, and State Representative Mike McFall, a Democrat out of Hazel Park. Thank you for joining me this morning. This seems like a no-brainer, kind of common sense piece of legislation, but it probably was difficult in the onset to discuss how this would all work. I'm curious, how does this work?
So it was, the laws or the legislation first was brought about last term. It was bipartisan there as well, but it never made it out of the Senate. It's based on Arizona. Arizona had passed it. It was actually me and Graham Filler, a Republican who's no longer in the House. We're sitting and talking about it and the issues that we've heard from constituents. About buying tickets and what is it that we could do about it. So him and I came together originally last term and then reintroduced it this term with Rep. Harris.
The other Mike.
Yes, the other Mike. The other Mike. It's a very popular name. It's a good name. It's a very good name. So that's kind of how it came about, because I still hear from constituents. This is probably one of the most exciting piece of legislation I've passed, according to most residents that I've talked to, because I get more questions about this than anything.
This is the number one piece that the younger generations, millennials, generally care about.
The Swifties have to love this, right? We're trying to use as many musical puns as we can to, generate some traction with this. But it's it really has been very positive.
So what is the language of the bill? What does it actually do?
Yeah, so I mean, the kicker is this is already illegal at the federal level, right? So the Bots Act made this so we could try and rein some of this in. However, it's a very difficult thing to prosecute. It's difficult to track these bad actors down, and currently the AG would have to file in federal court. This brings it closer to home for us. So as we work through this, and the fines were low. Right, so we can work through this at the state court level. The AG's office is probably way more familiar and can navigate the state courts a whole lot better. Sure. This also creates a violation where we can charge $1,000 or $5,000 per ticket.
$5,000 per ticket.
Per ticket. So when these bad actors are buying up thousands, like what we saw with the Taylor Swift, I believe it was the Eras tour.
Yeah, it was.
We saw tickets getting jacked up to like $10,000 a ticket. It was ridiculous.
Right.
So this allows us to recoup and keep that money here in the state of Michigan instead of it lingering out in the federal level.
So how does this work jurisdictionally then? When you have, let's say, a concert that may be outside of the Michigan borders, does the law still work if you're buying, if the purchaser lives in Michigan, or does it fall to the state where the venue is?
So the venue always takes precedent, right? So whether the bad actors operate here in Michigan or whether they're actually buying up tickets for a concert in Michigan, I think the AG can find a venue thing to latch onto in either case.
So you kind of answered my next question then, because I was curious about not only jurisdiction, but if there's already a federal law, why is a state one necessary? But now understanding it's more about cutting red tape and allowing our local prosecutors to handle this versus the feds who probably wouldn't take something like this on?
Yeah, I don't know how many that the feds have actually taken on. So we wanted to bring this to the state level to allow our attorney general, because I mean, ultimately, this is a consumer protection bill,
right?
Because we're trying to help families being able to. I mean, because you get in there and you start trying to buy tickets for a family to go to a concert or any event, and suddenly, you can't get the tickets, and you go to a reseller and they're like double, or if not triple the price, pricing them out for a lot of families.
I'll tell you, I was disappointed. My daughter really wanted to go to the show, and I made it happen, but I had to take her to Indianapolis to go see the show. I mean, how awful is it that I can't spend my money in my hometown in the States?
Right. Yeah, we would much rather you spend your money here.
Sure.
I have Pine Knob Music Theater in my district.
Yeah.
So this is in my backyard. and I can't even get original tickets to a lot of the concerts, right? It's by the time I get on, it's all on the secondary market, and these bots are buying up. You know, this is not to create another musical pun, but this is a reputation issue, right? And we can't continue to shake it off.
Right.
But I mean, the reality is, when these bots buy this up, they instantly get transferred over to the secondary market, and it's an issue. It drives up cost, and the platforms are having difficulty with this too, and they want help. So, you know, Ticketmaster's come out and reviewed these. So has StubHub, some other major platforms, and they don't like these bad actors either.
Okay, so quick question then. It failed in the Senate the first time then, passed the House, now it goes back to the Senate. What do you think will happen?
So it didn't fail in the Senate, it just was never taken up. It just wasn't taken up. Because it is very popular. You know, I mean, it passed almost unanimously in the House. In fact, I think it got more votes this time around than it did the last time.
That's because of the Mike and Mike.
Yes, the Mike and Mike show. You know, and so now, because we worked with the Attorney General's office to make sure it was a tool that she could use, so that's what we introduced, and now it's heading over to the Senate, hopefully to be taken up this term, you know, because again, it's a consumer protection bill.
Sure, right.
You know,
it seems like common sense legislation.
It does. It really does. And that, and talking to constituents and people across the state, actually, because I'm hearing from people all over the place about this. Everybody wants it. Yes.
Right. Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we have to talk about something that's a little less, I guess we can say, sexy, live on streaming here, but it still has to do with money, the state budget, in just a moment. Welcome back to Local 4 Live, everybody. We started our conversation this morning about the Taylor Swift bill and the Mike and Mike show here, which was a unanimous piece of legislation, I should say bipartisan, almost unanimous. Now we're going to put the wall in between you here. I can build some brick walls real quick and talk about the state budget, which missed a deadline, which doesn't really have any repercussions. Maybe it should, some argue. But October is the real deadline here.
Yes.
I know that most of you would like to see something finished by the end of summer, if not sooner. In your opinions, what are the holdouts? Why can't we get this budget passed right now? I'll start with you.
Sure. It's, you know, budget time is always a contentious time. You know, this year is not just an anomaly.
Right.
This is, you know, it's always a lot of discussion. We're talking about huge amounts of money. I mean, our current budget's $83 billion. When I first got into the legislature from police work, that just made me cringe. You know, dealing with that amount of money it's insane, really, when you look at it. So there's so many little pieces to this that really have to be worked through. Obviously, right now, the school aid budget is the big issue. Schools want to know how to get, you know, their budgets done, and they can't do that without, you know, some help from the state government. So it's a matter of trying to find consensus. Sometimes that's a very hard thing to do. The Republicans have put forth a plan that would do records amount for school funding, school pupil funding, $12,000 per student. We've never seen that before. Now, we've made some huge progress, we think, in how that is all set up. We've changed the process quite a bit. We've removed some categoricals and then put the money into the hands of the local school boards so they can determine what is best for their district, their region, instead of the state mandating more and more.
So, okay, now the other Mike, now that there's one more important than the other here.
Right.
Reading some articles, it sounds like most Dems are pretty strongly opposed to the GOP's version of the education bill because there are some key items in there that discuss gender-neutral bathrooms and transgender athletics, and I think that may be some of the key sticking points here.
Yeah, those are some of the key sticking points. You know, keeping the cultural politics out of the budget process would be ideal. So that isn't something that we're in support of. You know, we want to make sure, you know, that we continue on with the free lunches and the free breakfast for students, because we know that students learn better when they have full bellies. You know, and they're not concerned about food. We want to make sure that the mental health resources are still remain intact for our students, because we know still coming out of COVID, even though it's been a few years, I mean, there's a lot of students that are still struggling. You know, so those are some of the key aspects that we want to make sure are included in the budget process.
Okay, so where are our sticking points then, which we kind of started talking about here, but what do each of you on both sides of the aisle here need to do to get this to the finish line, or get at least to a point where you feel like there was enough compromise?
Well, this is where Mike and I probably are thankful we're not on the appropriation side. We're on the policy side, right?
Yeah.
It's, a lot of these negotiations take place, and they're I don't want to call it secretive, but they're amongst the negotiators, right? So a lot of these things, in negotiations, they move here, they move there, and there's so many moving pieces. It's really hard for us to know all the details of exactly where we're at right now, right? But I can tell you those continue to move. I was disappointed. I think the House has done a great job in working on this. I was a little disappointed that the Senate ended session on Tuesday, and we were ready to stay pretty much all night and keep hammering this out.
That was my next question for you. Is there a sense of urgency in Lansing, understanding that our K through 12s right now are kind of flailing around, not understanding what their budgets are going to be, especially because the two versions of the education funding are so drastically different right now?
They are. And again, it's not unusual, right? I mean, we usually end up, when we first submit bills in the budget process, it's anybody that's done negotiations, there's usually this side and this side, and eventually at the end of it, you find consensus in the middle, right?
But it would be nice, at least for those superintendents and school boards, to understand what their numbers are, because their fiscal year starts on Tuesday.
Yes.
Agreed?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, there is a sense of urgency, but it's that meeting in the middle and an agreement that that still needs to come obviously together. But
do we just lock everybody in a room and throw away the key then?
Yeah.
That's how we do it in police work, right? It's, Sometimes I feel like I want to bring more of my policing side into this, and I just bring all the parties together in a room and have food brought in and just stay there and duke it out and get it done.
Happens.
Right. Yeah. Stay there until it's done.
Yeah. Okay. Representatives, thank you so much for your time on this Thursday morning. Have a safe holiday week.
You too.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
And good luck with the Taylor Swift bill.
Thank you.
I'm sure a lot of people care about that.
We can't shake it off anymore.
And those bots just need to calm down.
He got his pun in.